Kyle Morrison stood at the massive window of Nexus Prime, watching ships from dozens of alien worlds dock at the space station. Each vessel looked more advanced than anything Earth had ever built. Some ships were sleek and silver. Others looked like living creatures with tentacles and fins. A few glowed with strange energy that made his eyes water. He touched the small Earth flag pin on his jacket and took a deep breath. Today would decide humanity's future in the galaxy. After 3 years of talks and tests, the Galactic Council would finally vote on Earth's membership application. The council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of alien beings sat in curved rows that spiraled up toward a domed ceiling covered in stars. Kyle felt very small as he walked to the center platform. His footsteps echoed in the quiet space. The first to speak were the Zephyrians. Their leader was tall and blue, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like sapphires. "We have studied the humans," she said in a voice like wind chimes. "They are still using chemical rockets to reach their own moon. Their computers run on silicon, chips that we abandoned 1,000 years ago. They fight wars with metal bullets instead of energy weapons." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not mean laughter, but the kind adults make when children try to help with grown-up work. A Krex delegate clicked his mandibles together. The insect-like creature was twice Kyle's height, with 6 legs and compound eyes that reflected the chamber's lights. "Humans are too emotional," he buzzed. "They make decisions based on feelings instead of logic. During our first contact, their leader actually cried during the peace ceremony." More chuckling from the assembled aliens. Kyle felt his face burn with embarrassment, but he kept his expression calm. President Sullivan had warned him this would happen. The Vortani representative was harder to look at directly. The crystalline being seemed to be made of living diamond, constantly shifting colors as light passed through its body. "Their military is primitive beyond measure," it said in a voice like breaking glass. "Humans still use nuclear weapons." Nuclear weapons. Can you imagine? It is like bringing a stone axe to a plasma battle. Kyle wanted to defend his species, but the rules said he could only speak when directly asked a question. So he stood there and listened as one alien after another explained why humans were backward, primitive, and harmless. Chairman Vextar finally called for order. The massive reptilian being was the size of a small building, with scales that looked like green metal and eyes like yellow suns. When he spoke, his voice made the floor vibrate. "We have heard the assessments," Vextar rumbled. "The consensus is clear. Humanity is a developing species that requires guidance and protection. They cannot be granted full membership in the Galactic Council." Kyle's heart sank. 3 years of work, and it was over just like that. "However," Vextar continued, "we are not without mercy. Earth will be granted protected status under the Benevolent Species Protection Act. You will have access to basic galactic technology and limited trading rights." Protected status. Kyle knew what that meant from studying other species who had received it. Earth would become a zoo exhibit, with aliens deciding what was best for humanity. "The hegemony has volunteered to serve as Earth's guardian species," Vextar announced. "They will establish a small administrative presence in your solar system to ensure your development proceeds safely." A new alien moved forward. Kyle had never seen a hegemony representative before. The being looked almost human, except for the gray skin and the extra set of arms. When it smiled, Kyle saw too many teeth. "We are honored to guide humanity toward civilization," the hegemony delegate said. "We will establish mining operations on your moon and asteroid belt to help fund your development. Of course, we will need certain resources from Earth itself. Your planet has some unique materials that would benefit the entire galaxy." Kyle finally found his voice. "What kind of resources?" The alien's smile widened. "Oh, nothing you will miss. Some rare metals, biological samples, that sort of thing, all perfectly harmless to your species' continued existence." The way he said harmless made Kyle's skin crawl, but there was nothing he could do. Earth needed galactic technology to survive. The planet was overcrowded. Resources were running low, and climate change was getting worse every year. "Do you accept these terms, Representative Morrison?" Chairman Vextar asked. Kyle looked around the chamber. Hundreds of alien faces stared down at him. Some curious, some bored, most amused. They saw humans as pets, he realized. Cute little creatures that needed to be taken care of. I accept on behalf of Earth, he said. The vote was quick and unanimous. Earth became a protected world under hegemony supervision. Kyle received a data pad with the official documents and a schedule for the first hegemony ships to arrive at Earth. As the council session ended, several alien delegates approached Kyle. They patted him on the head or shoulder, making comments about how adorable humans were and how proud they should be to join the galactic community. The Zephyrian delegate who had criticized Earth's technology was particularly condescending. "Do not worry about being so far behind," she said sweetly. "Every species starts somewhere. Why, the Vortani were still using wooden tools when we first found them. Look how well they turned out." Kyle nodded and smiled, playing his part as the grateful primitive. But inside, anger was building. These aliens looked at humanity and saw weakness. They saw a species that could be controlled and exploited. They had no idea what humans were really capable of when pushed too far. Kyle boarded, his small transport ship for the journey back to Earth. As Nexus Prime grew smaller behind him, he activated his encrypted communicator. "Mission Control, this is Morrison. The vote is in. We got protected status under hegemony guardianship." "Understood," came President Sullivan's voice. "How did they seem?" Kyle thought about the condescending smiles, the casual dismissal of human capability, the way they talked about strip mining Earth's resources like it was a favor. "Overconfident," he said finally. "Very overconfident." "Good," Sullivan replied. "That gives us an advantage they don't know we have." Kyle smiled as Earth appeared ahead, a blue marble floating in the black of space. The aliens thought humans were harmless primitives who needed protection. They were about to learn just how wrong they could be. Captain Lisa Hayes pressed her face against the observation window of Armstrong Station and watched another hegemony transport ship dock at Luna Base. It was the third one this week. The gray-skinned aliens were building something big on the moon, and they were not sharing details with their human partners. 2 years had passed since Kyle Morrison returned from the Galactic Council with Earth's new protected status. 2 years of watching alien ships patrol Earth's space like sharks circling prey. Lisa's job was to monitor orbital traffic and coordinate with the hegemony fleet, but coordination was a joke. The aliens told humans nothing and expected complete cooperation in return. Her communication officer, Lieutenant Ben Clark, looked up from his console. "Another mining barge just launched from the asteroid belt. That makes 12 this month." Lisa nodded grimly. The hegemony had promised to share mining profits with Earth, but so far humans had received only obsolete technology and empty promises. Meanwhile, rare metals that took millions of years to form were being stripped from Earth's solar system at an alarming rate. "Any word from the surface?" Lisa asked. "President Sullivan is meeting with the Defense Council again. General Carson and Admiral Brooks are both there." Lisa knew what that meant. The secret meetings had been happening more often lately. Something was brewing down on Earth, and she had a feeling it was not just diplomatic protests. On Earth, President Jack Sullivan sat at the head of a polished table in a room deep beneath the Pentagon. The faces around him were grim. General Pete Carson, a tough man with gray hair and steel eyes, spread intelligence reports across the table. "The hegemony has established permanent bases on 17 asteroids and 3 moons in our outer system," Carson said. "They claim it is for our protection, but our satellites show weapons platforms, not just mining equipment." Admiral Kate Brooks, commander of Earth's small space fleet, pointed to a star chart. "They are positioning themselves to control all traffic in and out of our system. If we ever want to leave, we will need their permission." Dr. Alex Turner, the planet's leading expert on alien biology, cleared his throat. "There is something else. The hegemony has been requesting genetic samples from humans. They say it is for medical research to help us adapt to galactic environments." Sullivan leaned forward. "What kind of samples?" "Blood, tissue, neural fluid. They are particularly interested in our brain chemistry and stress responses. I think they are studying how humans react under pressure." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. The hegemony was not just exploiting Earth's resources, they were studying humanity itself. Colonel Ryan Murphy, head of Earth's Special Projects Division, opened a classified folder. Maybe it is time they learned what happens when you study humans too closely. Murphy's projects were officially labeled as defensive research, but everyone in the room knew better. For 2 years, Earth's best scientists and engineers had been reverse engineering alien technology captured from crashed probes and abandoned equipment. The work was slow and dangerous, but progress was being made. "Show him the Phoenix Project," Sullivan said quietly. Murphy activated a holographic display. The image showed a sleek spacecraft that looked nothing like the bulky vessels humans had built before. "We have been building this in secret at the Cheyenne Mountain facility. It uses a hybrid of human and alien technology. The ship was beautiful and deadly. Human engineering had always focused on efficiency and reliability, while alien technology prioritized raw power. The combination created something neither species had achieved alone." "How many can we build?" Admiral Brooks asked. "We have materials for 12 ships, but we need more time. The hegemony is getting suspicious about our resource requests." Dr. Nina Foster, Earth's top weapons researcher, spoke up from the far end of the table. "The weapons systems are ready. We have successfully adapted human nuclear technology to work with alien shield frequencies. The tests show promising results." Sullivan studied the faces around the table. These were Earth's best and brightest, and they were preparing for war. Not because they wanted to fight, but because they saw what was coming. "What is the status of the galactic situation?" he asked. General Carson pulled up another display. "Not good. The Devourers have consumed 6 more worlds in the past month. The Galactic Council is paralyzed by politics. Each species is only concerned with protecting their own territory. The Devourers were the galaxy's nightmare. They traveled in massive fleets, consuming entire planets and moving on to the next target. No one knew where they came from, or what they wanted beyond destruction and consumption. The worst part," Admiral Brooks added, "is that the so-called protector species are abandoning their client worlds. 3 different civilizations under Zephyrian protection were left to face the Devourers alone." Sullivan felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying the hegemony might abandon Earth if the Devourers come this way?" "Sir," Colonel Murphy said carefully, "I am saying we should not count on alien protection when the real danger arrives." The meeting continued for 2 more hours. Plans were made, resources allocated, and timetables established. When the others left, Sullivan remained alone in the underground room, staring at the star chart on the wall. Earth had always been seen as a backwater planet on the edge of galactic civilization. Humans were considered primitive and harmless by species that had mastered faster than light travel thousands of years ago. But Sullivan knew something the aliens had missed. Humans had spent their entire evolutionary history as predators. Not just any predators, but persistence hunters who could track prey across continents and never give up. Every human carried the genetic memory of ancestors who survived ice ages, plagues, and countless wars through pure stubborn determination. The aliens saw Earth's violent history as proof of primitive behavior. They did not understand that violence, when directed properly, was humanity's greatest survival tool. Sullivan's secure phone buzzed. It was Kyle Morrison, calling from the diplomatic station orbiting Earth. "Mr. President, we have a problem. The hegemony just announced they are doubling the tribute requirements from Earth. They want twice as many resources, and they want them delivered ahead of schedule." Sullivan was not surprised. The aliens were getting greedier and bolder. They saw humans as sheep to be sheared, not realizing they were dealing with wolves who had learned to wear sheep's clothing. "Tell them we need time to discuss the new requirements," Sullivan said. "Sir, they say if we cannot meet their demands, they might have to find a more suitable guardian species for Earth." Sullivan almost smiled. The hegemony thought they were threatening Earth with abandonment. They had no idea they were offering humanity exactly what it wanted most: freedom. "Kyle, Tell them we understand their position perfectly. Earth will give them an answer very soon." After ending the call, Sullivan looked at the Phoenix Project files still spread across the table. 12 ships against an alien empire that controlled hundreds of worlds. The odds were impossible by any reasonable calculation. But humans had never been particularly reasonable when their survival was at stake. Commander Steve Parker stood on the bridge of the UES Pioneer, watching the worst thing he had ever seen in his life. The planet Kepler 442b was dying. Black ships covered the sky like a disease, and wherever they passed, the green world below turned gray and lifeless. The Devourers had arrived 3 days ago. The planet's government had sent desperate messages to the Galactic Council, begging for help. The hegemony fleet that was supposed to protect them had jumped away the moment the first Devourer scouts appeared in the system. "They just left," whispered Lieutenant Dana Webb from her communication station. 50,000 hegemony ships, and they just left without firing a single shot. Parker watched another section of the planet's surface go dark. 2 billion people lived down there. Farmers, artists, children, families. All of them were being consumed by creatures that looked like living nightmares. The Devourers were not like other aliens. They had no technology in the way most species understood it. Instead, they were technology. Living ships that grew instead of being built. Weapons that fed on the energy of their targets. They consumed everything: people, animals, plants, even the minerals in the soil. "Sir," Dana said, her voice shaking, "should we try to help?" Parker looked at his small ship. The Pioneer was an observation vessel with light weapons and a crew of 30. Against the thousands of Devourer ships surrounding the planet, they would last about 10 seconds. "Record everything," he ordered. "The galaxy needs to see what happens when the so-called protectors run away." The recording showed the truth that the Galactic Council did not want to admit. The hegemony had positioned themselves as guardians of weaker species, but when real danger appeared, they abandoned their responsibilities faster than light itself. By the time the Pioneer returned to Earth, Kepler 442b was gone, not destroyed but consumed. Every living thing, every building, every grain of sand had been absorbed by the Devourers. Even the atmosphere was gone. What remained was a dead rock floating in space. President Sullivan watched the recording in his secure bunker. The images were horrible, but what made him truly angry was the casual way the hegemony fleet had retreated. They had not even tried to fight. They had just calculated that Kepler 442b was not worth defending and left an entire civilization to die. General Carson stood beside him, his face like stone. The hegemony commander said the planet was strategically unimportant. 2 billion lives, and they were strategically unimportant. Admiral Brooks pulled up a star chart. "The Devourers are moving in a straight line toward the galactic core. Their next target will be the Altair system, then Vega, then us," Sullivan finished. Kyle Morrison appeared on the communication screen from his diplomatic station. His usually calm face was flushed with anger. "Mr. President, I just met with the hegemony administrator. They are pulling back their patrol fleets to protect their core worlds. Earth's protection level has been downgraded to minimal defensive coverage." Sullivan was not surprised. He had expected this. The hegemony was showing their true nature. They were not protectors, but scavengers who preyed on weak species while avoiding anything that might fight back. "There is more," Kyle continued. "They are demanding that Earth increase resource production by 300%. They say they need the materials to build defenses against the Devourers." "Defenses for their worlds, not ours, General Carson," muttered Dr. Turner joined the conversation from his laboratory. "Sir, I have been analyzing the genetic samples the hegemony requested from us. They were not studying human biology for medical purposes. They were mapping our stress responses and pain tolerance, so why would they need that information?" Sullivan asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "They were preparing to harvest humans, sir, like they harvest everything else from protected worlds. When the Devourers get close enough to threaten Earth, the hegemony plan to Evacuate select human specimens and leave the rest of us to die. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Earth had never been under protection. It had been under preparation for harvest. Colonel Murphy chose that moment to deliver his own news. "Sir, our long-range sensors have detected Devourer scout ships at the edge of our galaxy. They will reach Earth's sector in approximately 6 months. 6 months. Sullivan looked around the room at his advisors, his generals, his scientists. They were asking him to make a decision that could determine humanity's survival. "What is the status of the Phoenix project?" he asked. 12. Ships are ready, weapons tested and crews trained. But sir, 12 ships against what destroyed Kepler 442b. I know the odds, Colonel. Sullivan walked to the window that showed Earth spinning peacefully below. Billions of people down there had no idea what was coming. They trusted their leaders to protect them, just like the people of Kepler 442b had trusted the Galactic Council. The difference was that Sullivan had no intention of running away. General Carson, begin evacuation protocols for non-essential personnel. Colonel Murphy, prepare the Phoenix fleet for immediate deployment. Admiral Brooks, recall all our ships to Earth orbit. Sir, Kyle Morrison said from the screen. What? Should I tell the hegemony about their increased resource demands? Sullivan smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. Tell them that Earth has reviewed their protection contract and found it unsatisfactory. We are terminating our relationship immediately. Kyle's eyes widened. Sir, they will not accept that. They consider Earth their property. Then they are about to learn the difference between property and people. After the others left, Sullivan remained alone in the command center. He thought about the Galactic Council and their arrogant certainty that humans were harmless primitives. They saw Earth's violent history and concluded that humans were too aggressive to be civilized. They were right about the aggression. They were wrong about everything else. Humans had evolved as pack hunters who never gave up. They had survived ice ages by working together and never surrendering, no matter how hopeless things seemed. Every human carried the genetic memory of ancestors, who had looked at impossible odds and decided to fight anyway. The aliens had made one critical mistake. They assumed that because humans used primitive weapons, they were primitive fighters. But weapons were just tools. The real weapon was the mind that used them, and human minds had been shaped by millions of years of warfare, survival, and refusal to quit. The hegemony thought they owned Earth. The Devourers thought Earth would be easy prey. The Galactic Council thought humans were too weak to matter. They were all about to discover just how wrong they could be. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos. Representatives from hundreds of worlds shouted at each other in dozens of languages, while Chairman Vextar pounded his massive fist on the podium, trying to restore order. The Devourers have entered the inner systems, announced the Zephyrian delegate, her blue skin pale with fear. They consumed the entire Rigel system in less than a week. Nothing survived. Panic spread through the chamber. The crystalline Vortani representative flickered between colors as stress affected their biology. We must evacuate our core worlds immediately. The outer territories are lost. Kyle Morrison sat in the human observer section, watching the galaxy's supposed leaders abandon their responsibilities one by one. Every major species was pulling their fleets back to protect their homeworlds, leaving dozens of client species defenseless. What about the protected worlds? Kyle asked loudly, standing up from his seat. The chamber fell silent. Chairman Vextar's yellow eyes focused on the small human with obvious irritation. The protected worlds will have to fend for themselves. We cannot spare resources for every primitive species. Primitive species like the 2 billion people who died at Kepler 442b, while their hegemony protectors ran away? Angry muttering filled the chamber. The hegemony delegate rose to his feet, showing too many teeth in what was supposed to be a smile. The humans speak beyond their understanding. Earth remains under our protection, and we will decide what is best for their survival. Kyle pulled out a datapad and activated a holographic display. Actually, Earth has terminated its protection contract. We no longer recognize hegemony authority in our solar system. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several alien delegates, laughed at what they saw as a ridiculous gesture by a helpless species. Meanwhile, at the edge of Earth's solar system, the first Devourer scouts emerged from hyperspace. They looked like living nightmares, black ships that pulsed like diseased hearts covered in tentacles that reached out to taste the solar wind. Admiral Kate Brooks stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching the enemy ships on her tactical display. 12 small contacts marked the Phoenix fleet, humanity's secret weapon. Against them, over 300 Devourer vessels were spreading through the outer system like an infection. All ships, this is Admiral Brooks. Execute Operation Defiance. Show them what Earth means when we say no. Captain Lisa Hayes commanded the lead Phoenix ship, the UES Valor. Her crew was small but experienced, and every person on board understood they were probably flying to their deaths. That was fine with them. Humans had always been good at dying for the right causes. Target the lead bioship, Lisa ordered. Nuclear payload armed and ready. Her weapons officer, Commander Tom Garcia, looked up from his console. Ma'am, their shields are adapted to energy weapons. Our nukes might not penetrate. Then we get close enough that shields do not matter, Lisa replied calmly. The Phoenix ships moved like nothing the Devourers had ever encountered. Human tactics were based on centuries of warfare, where victory often meant sacrificing individual units for strategic advantage. While other galactic species fought to preserve their expensive ships and trained crews, humans fought to win at any cost. The UES Valor dove straight at the largest Devourer ship, ignoring the energy beams that tried to stop it. At the last second, Lisa activated the ship's ramming protocol, a tactic so insane that no civilized species had ever considered it. The Valor struck the bioship at full speed and detonated its nuclear warhead on impact. The explosion tore through both vessels, but the Devourer ship was completely destroyed while the Valor died taking it down. Valor is gone, reported Lieutenant Dana Webb from the command center. But she took their flagship with her. Admiral Brooks watched the tactical display as 11 more Phoenix ships repeated the same impossible maneuver. Human pilots rammed Devourer vessels while detonating nuclear weapons, trading their lives for enemy ships at a rate of 1-to-1. The Devourers had never faced an enemy willing to make such trades. Their entire strategy was based on overwhelming weaker species who valued their own lives too much to fight effectively. They did not understand how to counter an enemy that treated death as an acceptable tactical option. Colonel Ryan Murphy led the second wave of defense from Mars Station. His ships were older human vessels retrofitted with alien technology, but his tactics were pure human military doctrine. Remember, he told his pilots over the communication system, we are not trying to survive this battle. We are trying to make the enemy pay so much that they think twice about attacking Earth. The battle at Mars was brutal. Human ships used guerrilla tactics, hiding in asteroid fields and launching surprise attacks before retreating. When cornered, they rammed enemy vessels or detonated themselves to maximize damage. Dr. Alex Turner monitored the battle from his laboratory on Earth, analyzing Devourer communication intercepts. What he discovered amazed him. They are confused, he reported to President Sullivan. The Devourers have consumed thousands of worlds, but they have never encountered a species that fights like humans do. Their bioships are sending distress calls, asking for instructions on how to handle an enemy that treats individual survival as less important than victory. The key moment came when Commander Steve Parker's small squadron engaged a group of Devourer scouts near Jupiter. His ship, the UES Pioneer, was damaged and losing atmosphere. But Parker saw an opportunity. All ships, target the communication relay, he ordered. If we can cut their coordination, the main fleet will be operating blind. Lieutenant Dana Webb, now serving as his tactical officer, looked at the scanner readings. Sir, that ship is surrounded by 50 Devourer vessels. It is a suicide mission. Parker smiled grimly. Dana, every mission against these things is a suicide mission. The question is whether we die for nothing or die for something. The Pioneer and 5 other human ships charged the communication relay. Parker's vessel took dozens of hits as it fought through the Devourer formation, but he kept flying until his ship was more wreckage than spacecraft. At the last moment, Parker activated every nuclear weapon on board and rammed the relay ship. The explosion not only destroyed the target, but sent an electromagnetic pulse through the enemy formation that disrupted their biotechnology. Suddenly, the coordinated Devourer attack became chaos. Individual ships lost contact with their fleet and began making tactical errors. Human forces, trained to operate independently, took advantage of the confusion to inflict even more damage. Back at the Galactic Council, emergency reports were flooding in from observers throughout the galaxy. The impossible was happening. Humanity, the species everyone had dismissed as harmless primitives, was actually winning battles against the Devourers. Kyle Morrison stood before the shocked council members and delivered a message from President Sullivan. Earth offers aid to any world abandoned by their so-called protectors. We will fight for civilizations that cannot fight for themselves. But understand this, we fight as equals, not as subjects. The age of galactic protection rackets is over. Chairman Vextar stared at the small human with new understanding. For the first time, he was seeing what happened when humanity stopped pretending to be harmless. 6 months after the Battle of Mars, Kyle Morrison walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime with his head held high. The same aliens who had once patted him on the head like a pet now stepped aside respectfully when they saw him coming. Word of humanity's victory over the Devourers had spread throughout the galaxy, and everything had changed. The council chamber looked the same, but the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of condescending laughter, there was nervous silence. Chairman Vextar no longer looked amused when he gazed down at the human representative. The Galactic Council recognizes Ambassador Kyle Morrison of Earth, Vextar announced formally. Not representative of the protected world Earth as before, but ambassador. The title change meant everything. Kyle stood at the center platform and activated a holographic display. The image showed a star map of the galaxy with dozens of worlds, marked in red. These are the civilizations abandoned by their protectors when the Devourers attacked. 47 worlds, home to over 30 billion people, left to die while their guardians fled to save themselves. Uncomfortable shifting filled the chamber. The Zephyrian delegate refused to meet Kyle's eyes. The Krex representative clicked, his mandibles nervously. Even the crystalline Vortani had stopped their usual color changes. Earth has received requests for aid from 23 of these abandoned worlds, Kyle continued. We have accepted all of them. The hegemony delegate finally found his voice. The humans cannot possibly defend so many worlds. They have barely 50 ships left after their Pyrrhic victory against a minor Devourer scouting force. Kyle smiled. It was not a nice smile. You seem to be operating under outdated information. Perhaps you should ask your former occupation fleet about human military capabilities. 3 weeks earlier, the hegemony had tried to reassert control over Earth's solar system. They arrived with 200 ships, expecting to find a weakened human civilization grateful for renewed protection. Instead, they found Admiral Kate Brooks waiting for them with a fleet that should not have existed. Earth's industrial capacity had always been underestimated by the aliens. While they built a few perfect ships using advanced technology, humans mass-produced thousands of vessels using simpler but effective designs. The Phoenix project had been just the beginning. The hegemony fleet lasted exactly 47 minutes. Human ships swarmed them like angry hornets, using tactics no civilized species would consider. When hegemony vessels tried to retreat, they found their escape routes blocked by human ships willing to ram them rather than let them escape. Colonel Ryan Murphy, now promoted to admiral, had sent a simple message to the surviving hegemony ships. Earth's solar system is closed to your kind. Any attempt to return will be met with total destruction. The aliens had discovered that humans did not bluff about military threats. President Jack Sullivan appeared on the main screen, addressing the Galactic Council directly from Earth. Behind him, Admiral Brooks and General Carson stood at attention. The message was clear. Earth was no longer asking for permission. The Terran Alliance is now accepting applications for membership, Sullivan announced. Any world willing to fight for freedom is welcome to join us. Any world that prefers to hide behind false protectors is free to continue doing so. But do Not expect rescue when your guardians abandon you. The response was immediate. Within hours, 17 different civilizations had sent representatives to Earth. These were not the powerful species that had dominated the Galactic Council, but the smaller worlds that had been treated as subjects rather than allies. Dr. Nina Foster worked around the clock in her expanded research facility, sharing human military technology with the new Alliance members. The aliens were amazed by human innovation. Where they had focused on creating perfect weapons, humans had focused on creating weapons that worked under any conditions. "Your nuclear technology is so simple," marveled Dr. Kent, a Altarian scientist studying human designs. "Yet it is more effective against bioships than our most advanced plasma cannons." Foster nodded. "Humans learned long ago that the best weapon is the one that works when everything else fails. Complexity is the enemy of reliability." The real test came when the Devourers launched their second wave against the inner systems. This time they brought their full force, over 10,000 bioships intent on consuming every world in their path. The old Galactic Council response was predictable. Every major species pulled back to defend their core worlds, abandoning their client civilizations to face annihilation alone. The Terran Alliance response was different. Captain Lisa Hayes, promoted to admiral after her sacrifice at Mars, had somehow survived, led a combined fleet of human and allied vessels to meet the Devourers at the edge of contested space. The battle was brutal, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human tactics had spread throughout the Alliance. Ships from a dozen different worlds used ramming attacks, nuclear weapons, and guerrilla strategies that turned the Devourers' own size against them. When bioships tried to consume Alliance vessels, they found ships rigged to explode rather than be absorbed. When Devourers attempted their usual intimidation tactics, they faced enemies who had learned from humanity that some things were worth dying for. The Devourer fleet was destroyed completely, not defeated or driven off, but eliminated. The survivors sent a message that spread throughout their entire species: avoid the Alliance territories. The beings there were too dangerous to consume. Back on Nexus Prime, Kyle Morrison delivered his final address to the Galactic Council. "Earth withdraws from all protection agreements and recognizes only the authority of the Terran Alliance. Any species wishing to join us as equals is welcome. Any species wishing to maintain the old system of exploitation disguised as protection will find themselves increasingly alone." Chairman Vextar made one last attempt to maintain the old order. "The Galactic Council has maintained peace for thousands of years. You cannot simply abandon the system that has kept civilization stable." Kyle looked around the chamber, at the representatives of species who had built their power on the backs of weaker worlds. "Your system maintained peace by sacrificing anyone too weak to defend themselves. That is not peace. That is cowardice with better marketing." One by one, smaller species began leaving the chamber, not to return to their homeworlds, but to join the growing line of civilizations requesting Alliance membership. The galaxy was reshaping itself, and humans were at the center of it, not because they had the best technology or the most ships, but because they had shown something the galaxy had forgotten. That real strength came from standing up for others, even when the cost was terrible. Earth had been dismissed as harmless, because humans seemed too primitive and aggressive to matter. The galaxy learned too late that primitiveness could be strength, that aggression could serve justice, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe was someone with nothing left to lose and everything worth fighting for. Kyle Morrison walked out of the council chamber for the last time, leaving behind a galaxy that would never again mistake kindness for weakness or mistake Earth for harmless. The age of false protection was over. The age of earned respect had begun.